Alright guys, so what we're going to be doing is looking at um, multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So what we're going to be doing is kind of looking at polynomials in terms of fractions and how we can try to simplify them and make them smaller. Okay, so let's look at something simple. So take a chance, write this down. And what we have here is we have a cubic equation over a cubic. And what we want to do is we want to try to simplify this. So I cannot just cancel those two out. Okay? I can't cancel them out because they're not being multiplied by anything. They're being added or subtracted from something. So I can't cancel something unless it's been like multiplied out or divided out. So what we want to do is be able to factor these two expressions. Okay? So when I look at the numerator, it looks like it is a cubic equation and it has a cubic form. If you guys remember back in chapter 6, we looked at cubics and how they can be factored out as a cubed minus b cubed. Turns out to be a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. So what I want to do is I want to look at this, and this is x cubed, because I know x cubed gets me x cubed, and then what cubed gets me 27 is 3 cubed. So what I'm going to do is say that a is x and b is 3. And what I'm going to do is plug these two values into this equation. So I end up with x minus 3 times x squared plus 3 times x plus 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, that's how I get that 9 term right there, okay? So now I look at the denominator and say, hey, what goes into, how can I factor this out? And the first thing I always look at is what is the greatest common factor that goes into all of them. And x is the greatest common factor. So I'm going to factor out an x, and I end up with x squared plus 3x plus 9. And both of if I look now I can start canceling because I have a quantity times a quantity and a quantity times a quantity. So because I have the two same quantities, I can cancel those two out, and I'm left with x minus 3 over x. Okay? So step 1 is to factor the numerator and the denominator. Okay? Once I do that, I can cancel quantities that are in the numerator and the denominator. Okay? So what I want you guys to try to do is look at this next example, try to simplify this, and we'll talk about it on Monday. Okay? Now, I want to go over two other types. And what we're looking at is I have multiplication involved. So I'm going to be multiplying two quantities together. Okay? So what I'm looking at is I have two fractions being multiplied together. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Factor out the numerator and the denominator, but I'm going to do it twice with this one and this one. So I look here and I factor this out. So that's going to be 2x squared minus 5 over x plus 1. And then I do the other side. X plus 2 doesn't factor. And then I factor out the denominator. Now, I see that the greatest common factor is 3, so I will factor out a 3. So I end up with x squared minus 5. Okay? Now, multiplication implies that this is all together now, because I'm multiplying straight across and multiplying straight across. So do I have anything in the numerator and the denominator? Yes. These two quantities cancel. So I end up with 2 times x plus 2 over x plus 1. Nothing else cancels. Try this one, and then we'll talk about it on Monday. Okay, so there's one other one I want to talk about, and that deals with division. So I'm dividing these two quantities together. Now this looks a little bit more complicated, but what is division? It's multiplying by the reciprocal. So really, what I have is I'm not doing anything with 5x. But I can rewrite this by flipping it. and that becomes x squared minus 6x minus 8 over x squared minus 2x. So now I can do what I did before, is factor. So 5x doesn't factor. All right, and then I got 3 times x minus 4 times, now I factor this out, that becomes x minus 4, x minus 2, all over x times x minus 2. So now I look for times in which there's both the same thing in the numerator and the denominator. I have an x minus 2 and x minus 2 that cancel each other out. An x minus 4, an x minus 4 that cancels. And then I have an x and an x, which leaves me with 5/3. Okay? So try those two problems that I had before, and then we're going to talk more about this on Monday.